koutou katoa. I thought I'd decide to stand and, on behalf of Ken and Donald. I know he's sort of shuffling around doing this. What are we going to do? Anyway, it is our great pleasure to welcome to Ururoa Flavell, the Minister from Māori, and who's been in the limelight for quite a long time, and also to acknowledge the work that he's been doing, particularly in regards to whānau audit, which is huge, and we're looking forward to the work that will happen in that regard. So, ladies and gentlemen, can I please get you to a round of applause to welcome
Kia ora tātou katoa. Ko te mahi tuatai tēnei ata ko te mihi kia pūtau te haukai. Whakatūwhiri nei ki kua ki au, kia haramai ki kone ki te kōrero. Ka mihi rā, ki ngā mate, ka kōrero hia kētia rātou, waiho rātou ki o kiwa. Nei kūtau, nei tātou te hungora, ka mihi rā ki tēnā kūtau, tēnā kūtau, tēnā kūtau, tēnā kūtau. Where's Richard? I just wanted to acknowledge Richard this morning for... there you go. Kia ora koe. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Tika nā tā tēnei nā. He rawe tonu te rongo I te mita o te waipaunamu I mai tahu. Kia I a koe kōrero ana, ka nui te mihi ki a koe. Can I just start by acknowledging my fellow members of Parliament who are here before me, and obviously the mere fact that we have Calvin from the Labour Party, we have Jan from the Greens, and also Matt from National, and me from the Māori Party. Might suggest to you that we've got a major kaupapa going on here. I think that's important, that it recognises the importance that all of our individuals that are associated with the parties firstly have in this kaupapa, and secondly that actually there are no party boundaries when it gets to this sort of kōrero. So I just want to acknowledge them for being here and being with this kaupapa. I can also acknowledge the wonderful work Louise has been doing in terms of highlighting the issues. Ka nui te mihi ki a koe te tuahin, koe tēnei nuhu nei hei whau mo tēnei kaupapa. I want to acknowledge you all. I go to, as you'll appreciate, as a Minister for Māori Development, I go to a hell of a lot of hui, and there hasn't been too many times that I've been through a whole hongi line.
Just check your pockets.
Not a problem, there's nothing in there. I want to make that point seriously, because actually acknowledging everyone as a kaupapa, that's hugely important to me. For too often, we simply say, talking to our own people now, we simply say, oh, just the front line, which actually forgets the mana of everybody else. And, the kids, you sit down. Well, actually, our kids have mana as well. And our women have mana as well, and that's why you're all here, in one form or another, because we need to be thinking about everybody, not just the fortunate few who are on the front line or who happen to be male. So I was just thinking about that when I went around the line. It's been a long time, because I'm a huge advocate for saying, I don't care if there's 200, 300 people, everyone needs to be acknowledged, and for you to do that for me this morning was just reminded me of that kōrero, that everyone has mana, and the sooner we go back to that kaupapa, and actually the issues that we're talking about, you fellows are talking about here at this wānui, may not necessarily be issues, because it is the impact of mana on a person's soul and their heart and their spirit and their body is at the heart of pretty much what you fellows are all talking, and ladies, sorry, are all talking about today. So thank you very much for that honour. Thank you very much for that privilege, and it's good to be here. I've been in Christchurch for the last 3 days, just getting on the road, and hell, I can tell you, as I've been to, what am I at, number 3 hui today, and yesterday was about 6 or 8, and I've seen in the short space and time that I've been here, I've seen the corporate majors and their desire to make some money and look after their people, and I've seen the haurangis, the ones at the church centre, sitting at the gate, and they obviously rode there because there was bicycles beside them, with a guitar and a can of rum, having a drink at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I've been to a community garden where the people that come into that community garden are the homeless, the hard to reach, the people that have huge hearts and just want to live their life and just get some kai for the table. And I've been to the organisations that are all about trying to help those groups of people to live a life that is respectable, that is safe, they've got a roof over their heads. And so I'm sure that probably in summary puts you all in somewhere in amongst that whole mix. And that's in 2 days, but I am also convinced, actually I just came from a housing project that was 3 houses that were put on a site. They've all been resurrected, done up, they were due to be bowled. Somebody had an idea, let's fix them up and put them on a new site and make them available. And having been down here in the last 6 or 8 months, I know that there's some pretty lousy practices happening in this town with respect to how people are treated in the housing sector. And some might say, well, there's only 3 houses. Well, actually, for those whānau, those 3 families who haven't got a house and who have been looking for a while and have got tamariki and maybe mokopuna, that will make a huge difference to those families. But I know that's a huge, wide brief that I've seen, and I haven't finished the day yet, got a couple more weeks to go to. So thank you for allowing me to have some time with you today and share some thoughts about the kaupapa that you're discussing. And congratulations for coming together. I especially want to acknowledge you, Ken, having just met you, but also recognise that as that you're associated with the Canterbury Men's Centre for Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse. That trust is an initiative that you've taken up, and this way is all about bringing people together on a similar kaupapa. I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you've done in this area. Congratulations. I think for too often the issues of abuse and violence that impact on our boys and our men are overlooked, not necessarily discussed, sometimes swept under the carpet, with a focus on men as perpetrators rather than also acknowledging the significant number of male survivors. Today is all about refocusing and addressing the imbalance. I also recognise there's a couple of things happening in town at the moment. Somebody told me that all the refuges are full. That's not a good look. It's not nice to know, and I suspect that it's not just for Christchurch, but actually throughout the whole country as a state of how things are at. I also know that I had a meeting yesterday with the police to understand and try and get a feel for a response that's been taken by government called the Integrated Response to Family Violence Project. There are 2 pilots, one in Hamilton and one in Christchurch. I sat down with some of those involved with the police in looking at that project. I've got a few worries. I don't know whether we're going to hit the mark, but anyway, it's still to be launched. And I'll be reporting to the Minister about that, about ensuring that actually if we're going to try and do something new, which is this project, and that is a little bit more coordination of the agencies, then we actually don't, it's not about coordination of the agencies actually, it's about looking after the whānau. So if we spend too much time about how we're going to coordinate things, we actually forget about the kaupapa, which is our tamariki, our wahine, and our mea. So I'll take that up. It's not get worried. Still a couple of months yet, and I'll be back down to check it. But I certainly gave a bit of feedback. Actually, a lot of feedback about that project, which I hope will be taken up. I think those involved have their hearts in the right place. It's just a matter of making it happen. So, actually, I just want to take some time to focus on 4 particular issues that have been at the forefront of stuff that I've been doing in the last couple of weeks or so, and that have come across my table. There are different levels. One's at national, international, national, and at a community level. The most recent was last week, actually, a week ago. In Parliament, we passed the whole of the House by one party. Who shall remain nameless, but have a leader that's outspoken. The bill is called Te Pere Mo Te Reo Māori, and that established a legislative precedent that has attracted huge interest from Indigenous scholars across the world. It was the Māori language bill in another form. The new law represents a significant constitutional change being enacted both in Māori and in English, with the Māori language version taking precedent if it ever got into an issue of dispute. It's the first time ever first time ever for such recognition that Māori language will be entrenched in terms of being the precedent language in law. So I'm pretty proud of that and thankful also that the parties, all the parties that are here at least, all supported that particular piece of legislation. So I acknowledge them, in particular Calvin was a part of the select committee. It states that the Māori language is an official language of New Zealand. It is the foundation of Māori language, culture and heritage. It enhances the lives of iwi and Māori, and the knowledge and the use of Māori language will be sustained through the transmission of the language from generation to generation and by daily communication in the community. There's the first issue. The second issue was the tabling of a report. The name of the report was called Investing in New Zealand's Children and Their Families. Amongst its recommendations, the panel has noted that the love and care required by children and young people can only be provided through individuals and families, not through organisations or the state. But it goes further to note that all New Zealanders can have a role in providing love, care and support to vulnerable children, young people and their families. It identifies that whānau ora has a role in assisting whānau to develop a stronger understanding of their own strengths, and that strategic partnership with iwi is required to improve outcomes for vulnerable Māori children. The third event of national significance was the recent Tāne Ora conference held in Blenheim in March, and I know there's representatives of that organisation here. I think it is absolutely critical that we walk the talk, that we really communicate with one another. Tāne Ora had a focus on strategy and on leadership, strengthening tāne, males, exploring the opportunities of collective impact. We must always make space for the things that are often unsaid. We must provide opportunities by which, as men, we talk about our health and well-being in a meaningful way, give our lives the serious attention they deserve. Actually, what's more pressing, what more pressing issue can there be than survival? We have a saying in our Te Ao Māori, it goes something like this: mā te whakarongo, mā te titiro, ka puta mai te kōrero, mā te kōrero, ka māro. That saying goes, I think, is the best translation I can come up with. Through looking and listening, we have discussion. From discussion, we have enlightenment and understanding. So I just want to acknowledge those involved in Tāne Ora and the work that they do. The fourth event was the sentencing of a 60-year-old man in the Kaikoura community. I started my teaching career in the Kaikoura community a fair few years ago, so I know that community relatively still. I know many of the families. In fact, this morning I spoke to one of the daughters of one of the people that I used to teach up there. In the Kaikoura community not long ago, many of you will be aware that a man was convicted of 14 charges relating to sexual offending against complaints about abusing children. As the media pretty much flocked to gain some comment, another man spoke out about the court case. And this is what that man said, quote, "Acts of violence done to one person always reflect on the wider whānau, whether that be a perpetrator or survivors. We must all speak up and stand together to support our whānau to be strong, to be safe, to be well." So who was that man? That was Pa Mark Solomon, and I acknowledge him today for his leadership, his courage and strength in confronting the issues of violence that have pretty much traumatised our communities for far too long. There were many others in the courtroom apparently that day, the day of the sentencing, but two that I want to mention are Kiwa Hutchins and also her daughter Tania Mataki. Both women, I'm sure if you live in Canterbury will know these women. Both of them have a long, have had lifelong involvement in campaigns and taking action to combat the enduring crisis of abuse that damages every member of whānau in which offending takes place. Like Tāma, they were related to the offender who stood in the docks. Prior to sentencing, they made their position clear to him. The greater good of the whānau compelled them to support those who had been offended against. The greater good. And they made it clear leadership was required to turn the tide. So I mihi to them, because that would have been hard. So all of these things have been in my mind as I sort of tried to prepare a kōrero for today. And I put them out there as a sort of catalyst, if you like, a poe to some of the issues that I wanted to give to you. I'm a dad of 5 children now. I have 2 sons, soon to be a grandfather to my second mokopuna, and that is going to be a boy. And I take it as a huge responsibility. Actually, first, there's nothing like being a granddad. Nothing like being a granddad. Yeah, the kids come along, but the mokopuna, that's another world. There's nothing better than actually even having a mokopuna that speaks your reo. So I got one already. She's the queen. And she speaks Māori, so I'm blinking over the moon. But that next one, he's going to follow on. So I know, like all of us know, they're the ones we've got to look after. It's not until we have them actually that it really brings it home to you. So we all have a responsibility, a moral obligation actually, but most of all, we've got to maintain that whole notion about a driving love to look after our tamariki. That's what I want to leave with you today, and I'm sure that's not a kaupapa that is unfamiliar. But I want my voice to join with yours, and I'm sure with my other colleagues in Parliament, in saying that intimidation, sexual abuse, physical, emotional, psychological, financial violence has no place in the lives of our whānau. No place. I hope my testament, gee, I sound like a minister, but I hope that testament is about being a white ribbon ambassador, like Calvin. White ribbon ambassadors, at least we can show a leadership role in telling our nation it has no place in our society. We must be determined to fight as a collective, as a real big collective, that we cannot have that in our society. Anyone who seeks to erode the confidence and courage of the boys and men in our lives, that must stop. There is no excuse ever for violence to be experienced on any scale in any setting. So I support you in any initiatives that may be taken in this area, and I know that my colleagues will be there as well. But we can talk about it. Actually, it comes down to the doing. Institutions of the state, police cells, prison yards, youth residence, family homes, school playgrounds, psychiatric institutions are duty charged with creating and maintaining safe and healthy environments. Equally, the institution of the whānau, of the family, has an eternal responsibility to keep homes safe. That's in our area. To search for healing when hurt has occurred, to prevent opportunities for violence to occur. So the question is, how do we do this? And why do I refer, I suppose there's 4 scenarios that I think we need to think about. Firstly, I truly believe that all of us can dig deep to find the bold, the brave place within that enables us to stand like the kuia or the knight, to speak our truth and demand safety of all whānau. So speaking up is important. Secondly, it's about learning from the impact of whānau ora to know that success is more likely when we build on the strength of families, when we learn from local solutions as to how to make a change that will be long-lasting. Thirdly, it is from listening to the inspiration of other men who have shown us that tāne ora is a legitimate goal, that collective ownership is required to invest in health and well-being of men, as fathers, as brothers, as sons and members of whānau. And fourthly, it's through knowing that as Māori, so often the answers that fit best are those passed from generations before us, in the language of our tupuna and the thinking from time immemorial. It seems crazy to me from time to time that whenever Māori are put into jail, the way that the state responds is to give them Māori language classes, Māori weaponry classes, Māori carving classes, Māori tikanga classes, Māori everything else classes, which seems to tell you actually that the rehabilitation of Māori in our society is coming home, back to being Māori. That makes sense to me, about coming back to our language, our tikanga, our kaupapa, all those things that we value. That's important, and I think that matter should be raised. The wonderful thing about looking and listening to the shakers and movers around us is to see the changes occurring in the context of well-being for boys and men. On the 20th of May here in Christchurch, I understand there is a one-day workshop singularly focused on strategies for kaimahi and for whānau in the field of sexual abuse prevention. The Whānau Ora Commissioning Agency, Te Pūtahitanga o Te Waipanamu, has recently invested in a series of 5 initiatives in Invercargill, Dunedin, Kaikoura, Motueka, under the concept of Punanga Haumaru. A Punanga Haumaru is literally a place to rest and to gather strength, a place of safety where we can be warm and secure. The Punanga Haumaru projects are trying to give expression to one of the 7 whānau ora outcomes. That is, that whānau can be cohesive, resilient and nurturing. Another one of the approaches has been in supporting Te Puna Oranga, who are giving a voice to resilience and healing through a series of visual cards that enable whānau to support other whānau through adverse life events. What I like about all these different approaches is that they provide a rich and varied source of knowledge that can help us to gather strength in the most trying of times in our lives. Whether it be a one-day workshop, an online series of interactive cards, wānanga around self-esteem and confidence, all of these things, building a waka, whatever it might be, sharing strategies with other parents, or having an opportunity to learn a haka, a waiata, new karakia, each of these new experiences gives us another set of strength to draw on in times of crisis and conflict. And ultimately, this is where our greatest solution can be found, in the philosophy and principles of kaupapa Māori. Kaupapa Māori, by the way, is for everyone. It's just a different way of doing things that has actually a different worldview behind it. Kaupapa Māori is for everyone, whānau Māori is for everyone. It's a question of whether people are willing to put their foot into the pond. Kai tēnā te kōrero. So, I actually haven't got too much interest in the notion of blame associated with categorising the profiles of perpetrators and victims. What we know is that whether we call a person an offender or a survivor, the strength of a loving, supportive whānau around you can never be underestimated. And we have become more disconnected. As we've become more disconnected, it is the core values from Te Ao Māori that provide us with that knowledge to lean on in challenging the abuse and violence that happens. Values like whanaungatanga, manaakitanga, wairuatanga. Too often we simply talk about those kaupapa, but actually making them happen is where the rubber hits the road. And we can do it. We know we can do it because the proof is in the pudding in terms of the outcomes that Whānau Ora is already producing in the many families that I see up and down the country. And that brings me back all the way to Whānau Ora and to Te Reo Māori build, to the leadership of Tā Mark, and also Ngā Whaia, and Whaia Kuia, to the challenges of the children in care. It is about stepping up, and this wānanga today you're having is about doing that, learning from the stories passed on, recognising the collective strength of returning to whānau and healing from within. The greatest thing we can do for our men and boys is to promote the value of tāne ora. Tāne male ora being well, being in a good space. Live by the premise of whānau ora and be bold and brave enough to speak up when it counts. So with that, I hope that's been helpful in sort of continuing the theme that you've started with on your wānanga. I wish you all the very best with the continued kōrero. Unfortunately, I can't stay and listen on to the rest of the stuff that's going to go through, but as I say, having 4 members of Parliament, you've got any choice of where you want to put that kōrero. But it doesn't actually matter, because as I said, first thing as you can see is that we're all interested in what's going to come out of this wānanga. If you send 4 letters to 4 people, kei te pai, at the end of the day, we have an obligation to try and work through some of the issues that hopefully that you have the answers, some of the answers to give us a hand on. We might have, I suppose, a view of how the world might shape into the future, but actually the ones that work in this sort of area, the ones that have to do the craft, you're the ones that know what's going on. We need to be guided very much by the things that you do, the things that you say. I, for one, I'm sure my colleagues are the same. I want to hear from you, and we'll be possibly looking to work together about how we might be able to make some of this stuff happen. I hope it does. I hope it does, because me mutu te kōrero, ko eke ki te wā me whakatine ni ngā mai. So I'm saying, in the end, maybe the time has come, and this is not going to happen overnight, the time has come for us to try and shape and move some policy developments in the future for the betterment, not just in the political arena. Actually, it's for our tāne, it's for our tamariki, and for our country. And the tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou kia ora tātou.